Okay, perfect. Go ahead and get started now.
Cool. And audio sounds good?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, cool.
Hola, ¿cómo estamos? I'm Elia, and welcome to the second episode of Hable con Elia. This is a new video podcast in which I invite members of the artistic community from all around the globe with the objective of having an open dialogue and getting to know more about their art, life, and mindset. You can listen to us live via Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube every Saturday. And if you can't make it to the live broadcast, just know that you can listen to the recording on all imaginable streaming platforms. I have the great pleasure to introduce to you all my good friend, artist extraordinaire, and fellow parent, Greg Franklin, aka Kentucky Chrome from the Royal Firecrackers. Greg, welcome.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, Elia.
My pleasure. So I know that we had some technical difficulties at the beginning, but I'm very excited to have you here. I know this is my second episode, but I felt it was quite symbolic to have you here, mainly because when I moved to Seattle, you were literally the first person I met, the first friend. And I know that it was via a Craigslist ad. I was looking for people to play with, and I know that ironically we never actually formed a band. I know that there was an intention to do that eventually.
Totally.
But
eventually can still happen too.
Eventually can still happen. Yeah. Exactly.
once we get past the pandemic and all this goofy stuff.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I was just remembering, obviously meeting you and chatting about music and all that, but I also recall very fondly the time that we went to check out some local shows, and I was remembering that we actually went to a Unknown Mortal Orchestra show at the Crocodile. I think
it was right.
It was like one of the first shows that I attended to here in Seattle, and I know that we went together, and I remember there was probably 10 or 15 people, not that many people at the show.
Yeah.
And you already knew them, but it was the first time I actually saw them live, and I was just in awe. I just thought they were just amazing. And at the time, I think they were playing and they were touring with their first drummer, who is, I think, the singer now of Whitney. And at the time, he was 17 years old, and his parents were there. Remember that?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He was so young, and that freaked me out so much because I felt like they were, not like an old band, but they were playing 21 and over clubs, and I think he had to sit out in the van or something until they were ready to play and then get ushered in. So I'm glad to see that he's continued to do stuff and is doing stuff kind of on his own now.
Yeah, and it's a great band too. I mean, they've done some really awesome stuff. And I know that you just released this new single. I know that it's a cover of a Wire song, but let's go ahead and just dive into that. Tell me a little bit more about this song, what significance it has to you, and I know that you've been working on music in the past and you've released songs, but it seems like now you're formally consolidating, maybe hopefully an upcoming album.
Tell
us a little bit more about that.
So I just released a cover of a Wire song called Outdoor Miner on Spotify and all the major platforms, I guess, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it I put a bunch of stuff up on SoundCloud. It's always been a lot of covers and sketches and things that I was super excited about, but I also, none of it had a really formal structure to it.
Right.
It's just kind of been a sketch pad for me. And I think finally this year I was just it seems like it's a little easier to some degree. It's not so daunting to dive into getting your music released in a formal fashion. So I was just all right, let's try to get this thing on Spotify, because I feel like that's where most of the streaming ears are these days.
Right.
It's what I listen to all day, as much as I dislike it in terms of what they're paying artists and whatnot.
I hear you. Yeah.
It's the necessary evil of right now, and hopefully they'll not for my sake, but for actual people that are doing it for a living, hopefully they'll start to pay people.
And that's actually, I mean, you make a really good point. I've always been very critical of Spotify, but I also acknowledge that it is a way to connect with other people and to have your music available across the globe, and You never know who's going to pick up on your music and listen to what you have there. But do you feel that maybe what is also a big contributing factor is the fact that these streaming platforms are not really regulated by the government? There's no really control of what price they assign to artists, and it's very, I would say, just very problematic in that sense, because they are pretty much making up their own rules when it comes to how they pay artists.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know all the mechanical bits of that stuff, how it all works. Like, I just know from what I've seen artists that I love post about it. It's very much like what they're getting for what they're putting out and how many streams they're getting and stuff like that. Like 1 million streams pays you what, like $30 or something?
It's
like
insane.
That?
I forget, but it's a ridiculous amount for a ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
Likewise,
yeah, but anyway, Spotify is like kind of the necessary evil right now. So, and I was just kind of daunted by all that. And, as somebody who, like, you've recorded some of your own stuff, I know that you've also done studio work as well, but like, it's mixing, it's mastering, it's all those things that are, I'm thoroughly untrained on all that stuff, but it's still trying to, knuckle drag caveman my way through all that stuff. So this one, the song that I just put up, why it's important to me, I've kind of really come to the Wire Train a little late in the game, but I really loved specifically the version that I covered, which is like, I guess was only on their 7-inch. It wasn't the one that made the album. And there's a piano part in it that I just really loved. And every time I would hear that and these like kind of chopped up mellotron vocals in the original, I really, something in that just tripped a switch in me. And what I really love to do with covers specifically is I find things where I'm just like, oh man, like extra harmony or extra 2 harmonies or whatever on top of that would be so cool to try to do. So that for me was like, let's take this thing and do it in, I guess, my fashion, which is kind of blow it up, make it a little, I don't want to say glossier, but just a little bit more polished around certain parts of it, but still kind of keep it rough hewn and organic and interesting and weird sounding. So so I tracked it all here in this little basement room, which is now doubling as my wife's office during the pandemic. So she's taking phone calls with like what looks like a small guitar pop-up shop behind her, which is really awesome for her professional career, I'm sure. But yeah, and then my friend Ezker in Detroit, I'm terrible at piano. So I was like, hey, can you like recreate this part and kind of do your thing with it?
Sure.
And yeah, so he flipped it around in like under a week and got it back to me. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I finally got it all mixed, and then I actually did one of those online mastering things. I don't know if you've messed with that stuff at all, where you pay like there's some algorithm or some machine that masters it for you for like $10 a song. So
I've heard SoundCloud, I think, does that now.
SoundCloud does it on individual songs,
right?
And I think if you have like a pro account, you can do a few of those a month,
right?
I went through like, I want to say Cloudburst, but that's a brewery in Ballard. But it's Cloud something. It shows you how intrinsically important it was.
Did you research about it and you found them and you just?
I found a few different ones, and then I just was like, all right, I'll pay $10 for the master of this thing, because it's a cover. Great. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm not
sure.
Sure. If somebody wants to buy it, that's awesome. But I just wanted to get something out there more than anything.
Absolutely.
To me, it sounded good. And that is not a slight on mastering engineers who definitely know what they're doing, and deserve to be paid as well. But for what I was doing and just the speed at which I was just saying, like, you know what, it's January 2021. Like, I just need to do something and get something out.
Absolutely.
It served my purpose. So
And congrats, because I know that
Thanks, man.
obviously it's been a crazy year. I know that it's been a crazy year for us parents too.
Yeah.
And so I applaud you for going with your intention and with your love of music. I think it's a great cover, but it's
Thanks so much, man.
I'm always pick up on the essence, of Kentucky Chrome essence, aka the Royal Firecrackers. And I love also how you describe in one of your bios, I think I saw that it says these songs are meant to be listened to on anything other than laptop speakers,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
which I totally agree, first of all. And secondly, the song is very appropriate for not doing that.
My friend Zach, that I play music with as well.
Sure.
He has such a it's like almost a physical aversion to listening to things on iPhone speakers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you pull up a song and you want to show it to him, he's like, no, he's like, just send it to me. I'm not going to listen to it right now. Like I will listen. I'll do it on headphones. I'll do it the right way. And so I was like, yeah, it's not that hard to go grab headphones and at least make an attempt to listen to something the right way.
Right.
So
that's awesome. And tell me a little bit about the artwork, because I'm assuming you made the artwork too, right?
Yeah.
That's something that you're very experienced in, and I know that you did quite a lot of artwork and poster artwork for bands in the past. And is there a place where you have like a portfolio of the things you've made and you've created within the music scene?
KentuckyChrome.com is
perfect.
like my design and art website. How until I became a full-time dad, my day gig was always graphic designer, art director,
I remember that very much.
Job. So working for ad agencies and whomever else around town to, especially in Seattle, just make a bunch of Microsoft ads. And then when given the chance, diving into doing gig posters and poster design and stuff like that. It's definitely like my passion. So if anybody needs posters designed, not that gigs are happening right now, hit me up.
You should, because you're fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
And I remember you doing it for quite a few touring bands too.
Yeah, I did Unknown Mortal Orchestra. I did a poster for them. Car Seat Headrest. Trying to think of like who's actually like hired me on to do stuff. Boys Life. I did all their LP artwork. So just anything music design related is pretty center focused for me where I can.
Yeah, and
also nothing that pays any money compared to, making a Microsoft banner ad.
Sure. But still, I mean, you put in the time and the dedication.
Means
and
to an end.
You have to have an artistic, eye for that. It's not something that can just happen. And I've always admired that about you, because it's really cool how you mix in, your love for graphic design with music, and then what we're seeing right now for the release of Outdoor Miner. It's just awesome. It's beautiful. Maybe you want to elaborate a little bit more about the design. What
sure,
is there any symbolism with the is it a leopard?
It's a leopard. Yeah. Yep. I mean, the first lyrics of the song are no blind spots in a leopard's eyes.
Right.
And I really thought that was super cool. And I just honestly I put that together in like 20 minutes. It was such a just like, I want to get this thing done.
Awesome.
I had the master already, and I was just like,
sure.
Okay, I need artwork to go with this. What am I going to do? So I have like probably 20 cover singles that are in a heap of various states of being done. And so for me, I was just like, what can I do that's going to be, I don't have to worry about the artwork as much as I do just like get the music done, get it out,
sure.
and put it out there. So I'm going to use that as like a template.
Okay.
So like the right hand side, if you're looking at it, is kind of not on purpose, but I use sort of that like college notebook pattern. Like if you've seen those black and white like notebooks,
the classic ones.
Yeah. I just used. I love like that, just like ink splot kind of pattern. So I just use that for like one side of it, almost like this is my sketchbook. These are my studies of these great works kind of thing. So that's the right hand side of it. And then you've got the leopard on the right, and then there's just a little circle at the bottom that says, this is my paying loving tribute to Wire Thing.
That's awesome.
And when I got it all together, I was like, oh God, that looks exactly like just like leopard spots on the side too. But I'm just going to use that as a template for the singles that I do. So, you know, the next one that I do will have some other image where the leopard is and still keep that same text. So it'll all kind of have like a hopefully conducive feel.
That's
and then
great.
when I finally get an actual album done, I don't know what I'm going to do for the artwork. I'm hoping I have a buddy in Portland, Greg Walker, who's like an incredible musician and artist as well. And I haven't talked to him yet about it, but I really want to see what he can do for some album art for me. He might be watching right now, so if he is,
that's awesome. If he is, I hope he's listening, because that's a valid request.
Yeah.
So are you planning on doing recording other songs and eventually doing an album, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Cool.
Yeah.
So what's what part of what's the status of that, and what's your process? How's it going?
Oh, I
know it's a tough question, but I'm curious.
It's you know, I've been chipping away at this thing for like the first time I really remember sitting and working on things and going like, this could possibly become an album was like probably 2006 in Kansas City. Like I had a little studio set up in the top floor of my house and a little like 2-input inbox, and I just was getting my feet wet with Pro Tools and trying to figure that stuff out. And then, you know, as time has progressed, I've bought a bunch more stuff and kind of upgraded all my stuff. So I think what I'm doing, I'm starting to like get better sounds out of where I'm recording and whatnot. As far as the songs go, I've just got so many little ideas that are in various states of completion. So some of them are 90% of the way there, and some of them are 30% of the way there.
Sure.
So I just got to get. I was actually going to ask you about it, but like lyrically, how do you commit to that stuff? Like, because I feel like I have all these musical beds that have been kicking around, and I have, you know, rough demo ideas of them.
Sure.
What I want to do, but like committing to lyrics feels like such a daunting thing.
It is. It is very daunting. It's interesting. I think everybody, you know, has a different way of not just composing music, but coming up with it, right? I've always had this, I would say, very innate ability to create vocal melodies that eventually become into just very incoherent words that magically become into sentences and then become into verses and so forth. But in this last, and I've pretty much I've always done it that way. It always starts literally with a voice recording on my iPhone, on my phone, with just me, you know, just singing along. And many times, I don't know if this happens to you, but whenever I'm working on a record, or I'm trying to figure out what songs or what ideas to consider, I go back and I listen to these vocal tracks of me just going like boop 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 boom.
It's just you like in your car singing. Are you singing actual words, or are you
either I'm singing melodies? Actual words, or I'm just singing melodies?
Okay.
But it's just funny because sometimes I don't even know, I can't comprehend what the actual intention was or what the idea was. And because of that, it's hard for me to translate it into actual music. So I've had to skip a couple times. And so now I try to at least pick up the guitar and at least emulate, you know, whatever idea I have in my head. Or I will actually say like, you know, I'm playing this string or this chord to the phone as I'm trying to record it, so that I, you know, later on, you know, in a few months from now, I have at least some reference to what it was that I was creating.
What it was,
which is hilarious, And I'm sure I've had quite a few other good ideas that I've just been lost because of that inability to understand what it was that I was trying to recreate. But when it comes to lyrics, you know, I made a very conscious decision this time around with my upcoming record to really dedicate more time on writing the lyrics as opposed to just coming up with this natural, very organic way of composing and, coming up with words and then sentences and verses. I took the time to, really sit down and use that same process, but then apply, further thinking and reflecting on what the intention of that song is, and add more verses to it and so forth. And that was a thing that I did because I recognized that in past works. And I guess this is probably a good question to also talk about. And it might be me. I think this has been discussed, in many other segments. But I tend to focus more on the musical aspect than the lyrics.
Yeah,
naturally.
Same.
And so,
are you talking like when you're working or when you're listening to other people's stuff?
When I listen to other people's stuff, the music is what appeals to me and what elevates me. Yeah. And so I recognize that I have to also, it's not like I was like, okay, this is an evolution of my artistic capabilities. It was just more of like, I have to put in the work. I have to put in the dedication to really come up with something that I know I'm going to feel even more, more comfortable with. And so I'll ask the same question back to you, which is, how do you feel about that? Are you someone who interprets music, or when you're composing music, to focus more on the musical aspect than the actual lyrics?
Yeah, that's how so much of my stuff is right now. Is it's all these ideas that, gosh, I feel like such a talking about like sort of unfinished ideas feels so kind of nebulous and also a little pretentious. But
it's fine.
Just like I get these ideas, and then you start to like hash it out and start to like define those parameters of the song structure and stuff like that. And then, I think the lyric writing stuff it's the hardest part, because the bed is there and you have to work within some parameters. It's not free form anymore.
Right.
So some words are not going to fit, some phrases are not going to fit. And it's just such a, like instrumental music is beautiful. Like I love Explosions in the Sky. I love Tortoise. I love things like that. But you're not revealing so much about yourself that could be that embarrassing to some degree, or like that 10 years down the road, you're going to look at and go, oh man, like, that was such a silly thing to write about. Like, why did I care that much about that thing? And like, I just dug through a bunch of my old band's recordings, like put our record up on Spotify. It's a band called the Believe It or Nots. That was my like first real band in Kansas, growing up when I was 20. So it's like I listen to that stuff and I'm like, God, I'm like just doing that thing where you're rhyming like fly, sky, high, try, like all these like very kind of corny things that we look at now and go like, oh my God, why would you ever do that? And so I think for me, a little bit of the holdup is that embarrassment of just going like,
I understand that.
Are you going to put yourself out again like that?
Right.
But yeah, and it's also just not fun to sit and like hunch over a notebook and pour these ideas out and like scribble and scratch and and hearing yourself singing. I don't know if like maybe you are one of those people who's lucky enough to be in love with the sound of your own voice, but I've never been that person.
Oh man.
So
you shouldn't be so hard on yourself. You have a great voice.
Thanks, man. But still, it's like there's nothing more.
I know. You're critical about your own work.
Yeah, and I really don't think that there's a more vulnerable musical position than singing your own words and like recording it by yourself or in a room with some producer, or your family is like running around like making stuff in the kitchen or whatever, and you're just like trying to get a good performance and kind of messing up left and right and trying to like hit certain notes or whatever. So I think for me, it's just this year my big hurdle that I want to get over with the creation stuff is to get past that embarrassment and that vulnerability and actually just dig into it and realize that it's all part of being human, and we all have those like cringeworthy moments in our life, and
Yeah.
trying is better than not. So
I agree 100% with you. And I was just going to say that there's, even though I've also heard some recordings that I did 10, 12 years ago.
yeah,
And I have that moment where like, oh my gosh, like either my voice or what I was singing. But there's also something beautiful about that, because,
yeah,
and this is why I'm doing this podcast venture project, whatever you call it. The same way that I feel about music and registering music, right? You know, it's part of your identity. It's part of your biography, right?
yeah,
And so listening to music that you've done in the past, that's the power of music, can transport you to that time where you recorded that, or the feelings you
right,
had, or the moment and there's something beautiful about that, because then that's how you can also see your trajectory and how you've evolved musically, artistically, over time, because everything that you've registered and you recorded is a part of your life, and it's part of that moment in time.
yeah,
And the other reason why I wanted to do this podcast thing, besides just trying to figure out of my already busy schedule with work and parenting, which is
yeah,
outrageous, I needed to have another way to express this interest that I have in recording conversations with artists. And I feel like that's just as powerful and just as important as releasing music, because it gives us a better idea of who is the artist behind this project, the way they think. And, it might happen that 5-10 years from now, we'll watch the YouTube recording of this video and you'll be like, wow, this is special. I hope.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I guarantee you,
you,
like 5 hours from now, I'll look at this and be like, "Oh my god, what? Like, why was I rambling so much?
no,
What am I
not
talking about?"
this is why it's important to do this, because it's a testament of your work, it's a testament of your life. And to also maybe tackle another element which is important is, when you write music, are you thinking about writing, or do you write about things that are happening to you at that time, or are you writing fiction, or are you coming up with things that are just symbolic to you? Because in my case, I almost always write about personal experiences or personal
Yeah,
feelings, right? And I tend to be very critical about that, because it's like, do I really want to do every song about this and that, or should I try to? And then that's where
yeah,
the part of me which is more like, just let the natural organic process go through and occur, because I feel like there's also that element that's yours alone, that
yeah,
has to be different, and comparing yourself to others or thinking what others might think is a distraction and a factor that can impede you from actually
totally.
fulfilling this. So maybe tell us a little bit more about that and your process
Where I'm
for
writing
that.
from,
Yeah.
like, I will say, until this year, like, I feel like the pandemic really, having all this time of, I'm so not busy getting out of the house and doing things,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm so just like focused on being around my family and also just being in my own head constantly, has been really great in a lot of ways. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, once I can tune out the outside world and sort of just the crushing craziness that has been happening and continues to happen, and give yourself the runway to sort of just feel whatever you're feeling, and not be, not feel guilty about living a good life, or having the time to think about yourself, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that begins
Yeah.
to answer the question, but for me, it's, I've given myself a little bit more liberty to write lyrics from other perspectives, and
I
to
like that.
sort of put myself into a little bit of more of a character.
Mm-hmm.
I found some of the more freeing stuff that I've written has been writing from an outside perspective, looking at me
Interesting.
and talking about the things that I'm doing wrong that I could be doing better. Or,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not writing songs that are like from an outside perspective praising myself. That would be maybe a little weird. But no, I kind of, it's hard because
Mm-hmm.
there's so much of a history of music, of people using that in kind of a corny fashion too. I think of like Guns N' Roses, like Axl Rose. There's definitely some stuff that he wrote where he's like, "Oh no,
Sure.
that was from like a different perspective or whatever," and you're like, "Come on, man!" Like it seemed really pretentious to me at that time, but now I'm starting to give myself a little bit more grace on that stuff. And I also like I love. I grew up on 90s indie rock, so I love like Pavement and Guided by Voices and shop like the whole Matador catalog from the 90s, basically.
Yes.
And all those guys tended to write songs that still after 25 or 30 years of studying some of that stuff, I'm completely unsure of what it's about, but I know what it's about to me.
Right.
So I am trying to write songs that are, I guess, about, my ideal is to write really catchy pop songs that have cool, weird edges to them or weird sonics to them, and lyrically are not 100% just obvious of what it is. And yeah, so that's, I guess, what I'm trying to do.
That's awesome.
But I'm, sometimes things are definitely like 100% personal and are about things that I've been through, and
sure.
And I don't know if you ever write songs that are from a place of conflict with a friend or conflict with somebody that is still a like close person to you, but I've started trying to give myself more grace to like let that stuff out too, to where you can write these things that are personal and that are like pointing a finger at somebody and going like, this is not okay,
or that have impacted you or affected you, right?
Yeah, because I mean that stuff is super important, and you can talk to those people all day long, and it may not fix it, but sometimes writing a song about it might. But you also don't want to hang that person out, to dry and be like, "Oh yeah, and I wrote this song about you, and this thing that you did that really was terrible."
Or you also don't have to tell them.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true too.
And if they find out, let them find out.
Yeah. And no, it was funny. I was like kind of rereading some of your stuff about your albums, and was reading about Flora, and I was and how you wrote that for your daughter, and that was a thing that hit me like a few months ago. Before I'd read the stuff about yours, was just like, I want to leave an album as like a legacy for Henry, for my son.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's just such an important thing. It's like it's such a big part of who we are. As people, who we were before we had kids, before we became like dad. And for me, I was just like, well, it would be a really great motivation to tell in some form, obvious or not, these stories about what I've been through, and leave that for him as this like, I don't know that I necessarily want it to be this super cryptic, like, okay, you're following Lost and trying to code what these numbers mean or whatever, but just something where he can listen to that stuff and glean a little bit of insight of who I am, who I was before he came along, and how he's changed me, I guess, beautiful. To some degree. So, you should I know that you're doing the same thing. So,
yeah, I first of all, I think that's magical, and I think it's really special to what you're saying, because I do think that that's a good way to feel motivated to even present a record or an album that's revolving around your son, and I think, to be quite honest with you, that's what I've been doing. My goal is to write an LP for each of our kids. So Elia, who, as you know, passed away, my first LP is in memory of her, and a lot of the music revolves around the experiences of losing our daughter and those feelings, and it was really therapy for me. I mean, that's the first thing I thought about. Is I worked a couple more months, I quit my job, and then Ali and I, we went to Ecuador for the summer, and then I recorded my album there, because I felt it was an important thing to do, and that's the way that I was expressing my my emotions and everything that came with that. And then Flora is the time that I moved to LA. I was just like you. I was a stay-at-home dad. I was taking care of Mila the whole time. I was literally focusing on music. It was an important part of me. I was touring I was fulfilling this need that I always had, which was to just fully dedicate to my art. And from that, I was like, that's a perfect segue. That's a perfect next chapter, next album is to record a record that's based on quite the opposite experience, which is, her name is Mila Flora, Flora meaning, flowers, and this kind of regaining the energy and giving me this, enormous strength to keep doing music. And so as a result of that, this is where the album's done. But we've been also working on it for a couple of years now, and hopefully it's going to be out. It's going to be out this year. But at the same time, now I'm thinking already, like, okay, what's the next record going to be? And I know that the next record is going to be something about Luca, which is our son. Yeah. And I'm actually,
how old is he?
He's going to be 2 in April.
Yeah,
which is insane. But yeah, I mean, enough about me. But it's there is something very, very important about talking about those personal experiences, and bringing a kid to this world is a significant one, very important one. And I love to hear that that's something that you're thinking about. And one of the things I love about just seeing you guys, obviously on a daily basis with social media, is he is literally a mini you. Like, Henry is such a such an expert in music. He loves the same things that you do. I know that we both have a passion for Star Wars. Mila knows more about Star Wars than I do. It's insane.
Oh my gosh.
She's memorized the whole encyclopedia. She knows characters that I've never heard about.
We'll need to trade books sometime, because we have these like Star Wars encyclopedias, and that's how I wake up these days. Is Henry like kicks the door open at like 7:15, 7:30.
I love that.
Throws this giant Star Wars compendium book like basically at my face. And he wants to talk about, I'm trying to think of what his most recent obsession was. It's just a lot of characters that to me are not even important.
Yeah.
And yet somehow they're like the rock stars of it, like Greedo.
Like Greedo, yes. Or Griata.
Yeah, exactly.
Mila loves Griata. And she's
I didn't realize that there was like a like whole line of Greedos. Like it's like a race of Greedos, and not just like one guy. There's like Ponda Baba is one of them. He's the guy that has like the kind of looks like he has a butt for a mouth.
Yes.
Not important. He's in the cantina scene in A New Hope for like a second and a half, but like Henry obsessed about him and just wants to know all the facts about him. So I'm sitting here like on Wikipedia, reading all the,
trying to figure out who they are so that you can explain to Henry.
I'm gonna like by the time he's in college, I'm gonna have a doctorate in Star Wars, like tertiary characters.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
So, which I love Star Wars. I'm just not that like deep dive on it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know if this happened with you guys, but Mila really. I had some toy figures, Star Wars toy figures from the '90s editions that I collected, and then I put in a box. And I was like, one day I was like, oh, look, Star Wars toys here. And so she's played with all these toys, and then she found my little encyclopedia about Star Wars, and it's literally like the Bible here. It's like this.
Yeah.
It has even like Post-it notes covering certain things or things that scare her. She covers it, and then like, okay, she doesn't look at it. But
has she seen any of the movies yet?
She has. Okay. But what I was going to say is that she knows more about Star Wars from the books than from actually watching. And so we've watched episode 1, the majority. Obviously it's certain parts we make sure that she doesn't watch. But we watch parts of episode 2. We haven't watched episode 3. We've watched episode 4, parts of it as well. I've purposely like recorded her watching it, because for me it's like such an important moment in my life.
Totally.
And I have to say that I am so happy that I can enjoy episode 1 with someone, and that someone is my daughter, because that movie has been criticized by so many people. That's the movie that I grew up with. The trilogy obviously, has been there for many years, and my older brothers, for example, grew up with those movies. But
I was gonna say that's our generational difference right there. Is like I'm such an OG trilogy guy, and the parts 1 through 3 to me, like I'm just like, oh, I don't know that I like when Henry hits that. He's seen episode 4 and that's it, and he's watched episode 4
Okay.
probably like four or five times.
Sure.
That's like a special treat in our house. Is like we sit down and watch episode 4 with him.
You're a
Empire,
traditionalist.
yeah, I'm totally a traditionalist, and I didn't mind the newest ones, but
see the newest ones I feel like are complete crap.
Really? Okay.
I love Rey's character, and that's something that Mila looks up to, and we have watched parts of it. Well, we're not. I don't. If you want to dive into that, we can dive into that. But I don't know. I think they screwed up with the whole. And I know even like Daisy Ridley a couple months ago admitted that the production team didn't really have a plan for the whole 3 movies, at least a storyline for all 3 episodes until the end, and they were like, I guess this is how we're gonna do it.
And then Luke disappears,
and then but then we saw the Mandalorian.
Alert, if anybody hasn't seen it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in any case, it's for me, I don't know why, but I love episode 1. It's such a memorable movie. And I was 14 years old when it came out, or 13 years old when it came out. Yeah. And so for me, there was like I knew already about Star Wars, and I already was fascinated by the Star Wars world. But that was like the movie that was like, okay, that's the movie to go watch for my generation. And obviously the acting is not the best in some cases, but there's something about the movie that's really special, at the essence of Star Wars, and feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm part of something bigger than myself.
Maybe if I go back and revisit it, it would feel better to me.
You should watch the interview they did on the actor that portrays or does the voiceover acting for Jar Jar Binks. It's an emotional ride, because he basically doesn't understand why there's so much hate towards his character, and it gives you you sympathize with Jar Jar Binks, and but anyways, long story short, we were watching episode 1 for the first time, and literally Jar Jar Binks appears. The scene where like Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, they're trying to get away from one of the those like big battleships, whatever they're called, and the droid ships, and they stumble upon Jar Jar Binks, and I have her recording, just looking at it. She's like, Jar Jar Binks, like just so elated that Jar Jar Binks is up there. Like she finally got to meet, and she was just cracking up the whole time about it, and
he's comic relief. He's just like
it is exactly
arguably the goofiest character in the whole Star Wars universe. I remember this. It's such a stupid story, but I just remember like when that came out. I was in college. I was at I think I was at KU when those movies came out. No, it was after that. But they started releasing Jar Jar toys, and I just remember seeing this, like going to Walmart. They had this giant wall of all these like mechanized Jar Jar Binks toys, and I was like, all right. I was just a kid with way too much energy, so I just like went through and like pressed every single one of them, and I had this whole wall of like shaking Jar Jar Binks toys that were like, I thought the wall was going to collapse on me, or like a bunch, like all these kids were walking by and just kind of flipping out. But yeah. Oh, man, anyway, that's what Jar Jar Binks is to me. It's just that that wall of toys.
This wall of toys that almost fell on you.
But I saw that movie in the theater, the first one, the day after it came out, and I saw it with. Do you know that band No Knife?
No.
You remember them?
No.
They were like amazing San Diego band. But they were touring. Yeah, like late 90s, early 2000s. This would have been probably like 99, I'm gonna guess.
Okay.
They toured a bunch with Jimmy Eat World, so we all saw Star Wars together the day after it opened at like an outlet mall in Olathe, Kansas, and I was such a Jimmy Eat World fan, and I'm like, I'm watching Star Wars with Jimmy Eat World.
That's amazing. That's a great band, by the way. I think
that's
one of the most.
I still love their stuff.
There's such a. They're so dedicated to their art, and they've been doing the same thing always. But the way that they tour is insane. Like I've never seen a band tour so much. Beside Dr. Dog, they tour like crazy. But I love that they have. They've always kept the same and they've always kept really close to their their musical identity, and they've always done the same thing. I would say that that's definitely one of the first bands that I was like, whoa, what's that? When I watched the middle, the video, which obviously was like controversial at the time that I was watching, because I was like, I don't know, I forget how old, but I just remember the just how amazing it sounded. I was just taken somewhere else when I heard that song, because it's just so powerful, and it's just right there, and it really hits you, and it's which is this is a good segue. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, growing up in Kansas City, what was like the first musical reference you had, or what did you grow up listening to? I'm also curious to know a little bit more about what the scene was there, what music scene there was at the time that you were growing up there, and did that also have any influence in you?
It's basically like just suburban Kansas City. We were about 20 or 30 minutes from kind of downtown. Nice, great place. Johnson County, Kansas is always like voted one of the best places to live in America. Good schools, all that stuff. And I was an only child, so I definitely grew up without that influence of an older brother, sister, or whatever. I just was super thirsty for music from the second I can remember. Like, my parents gave me a Ricky Nelson record. I don't know if you know his stuff at all, but I had a Ricky Nelson record and this Mickey Mouse record player. And I just would sit there and like, I just remember putting that, it was like the Mickey Mouse arm had the needle on the bottom of it. You put his arm over there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I just would listen to, I had a bunch of like 7 inches. It was like the Oak Ridge Boys, Elvira, and the greatest American Hero, and this Ricky Nelson record. And I just would play those over and over again. And then got a tape player one year, and that was like, I just listened to the radio all day long and like drew in my room.
Right.
And I would run across the room to like tape songs that I loved from the radio. It's so funny.
I was just going to ask you that. Yeah.
Having a kid now and going like, you will never ever experience that like panic of like, oh God, my favorite song just came on and I don't have a good recording of it.
Right,
like,
you missed it.
Running across the room. Like, he just, Henry, we listen to Spotify, and he's like, I want to hear Purple People Eater. And so you're just like, okay, I'll pull it up and we'll play it. And, and that's what it is. But my parents weren't particularly musical, but I was always super interested in it. And then I was kind of that perfect age. Like I just listened to top 40 radio all the time, and it was like Huey Lewis and the News was my favorite band probably growing up, or Aha,
right?
And Def Leppard, and the 80s pop metal, which probably comes out in a lot of like my guitar playing. I love putting like fifth harmonies on stuff, and
love that.
And then Nirvana happened when I was in 9th grade, and that was like the perfect age of like, I'm old enough to listen to music with bad words on it without telling my parents that I was listening to that stuff. And old enough to go buy my own tapes, and was working. Like, my first job was I worked at a Camelot Music in the mall.
Okay.
I just basically spent every paycheck that I had on buying records. And then locally, Kansas is such a small place that I loved it, because if you were interested in that scene, it was really easy to get to know the people that were there. So I really, like, there was one good, like, kind of alternative radio station called The Laser, and they would play local music as much as they could. And that was really awesome, because it really exposed me to a lot of bands that I probably wasn't old enough to get out and see. Clubs there were 18 and over. So, which was nice. Like, you could get out in high school and go see a show at a like rock club. but yeah, I wrote a letter to this band Kill Creek that was like a local band that had put out a record on Mammoth. They're phenomenal, and their singer Scott Bourne is one of my favorite songwriters ever. So if I can recommend them highly enough, seek them out. But I wrote them a letter and was just like, hey, I really like your music, and I live in Olathe. And they wrote me back, and they were like, hey, we're doing a show. Come out and come see us play.
That's awesome.
And I did introduce myself. I ended up buying my first guitar from Scott. Like,
you're kidding.
$100.
What guitar
Lotus
was it?
Les Paul.
Okay.
It was a Lotus brand Les Paul knockoff. And yeah, and then I just like never missed a Kill Creek show. Probably saw them 40 something times in my time in Kansas City and Lawrence. And then yeah, there was a lot of other really great bands. Panel Donor. I still, like, if I'm just sitting around with nothing to do, like Henry's asleep and Maria's asleep, and I'm just like, what do I do? I love to put on records that I grew up with, like these Lawrence, Kansas bands. So it's like Panel Donor, a band called Vitreous Humor, a band called The Regrets. These are all 92 through 99 releases.
Sure.
And that stuff all sticks with me. Boys Life is a Kansas City band. The Get Up Kids.
Okay.
The Get Up Kids were more my age, so they were more peers. But like all these other people that I'm referring to were 5-10 years older than me, and just seemed like the coolest people in the whole wide world to me at that age. But like how rich that Lawrence music scene was. We had a really great club called The Bottleneck. It's still around, but not really doing shows at the moment.
Right.
But that music scene was so rich, and that was like completely what made me want to go to college at the University of Kansas. Was I just loved that city, and I loved that music scene, and I wanted to be in it and part of it. And,
right.
Yeah. So
that's awesome. That's really special. I appreciate that, because I also feel that I was had the opportunity to live in the States during the 90s and go. I mean, my first time that I ever bought a record, a CD was at a Sam Goody at the time when people used to buy records. And
what was your first CD?
My first CD was No Doubt, Tragic Kingdom.
Okay, nice. Mine was Faith No More, The Real Thing.
Well, that's much better.
In 8th grade. No,
that's awesome. No, at the time I loved No Doubt. I thought that was such a amazing vibe. I bought another CD, but the other CD, I'm not going to tell you what it was, because I am a bit embarrassed about that.
Is it Hootie and the Blowfish?
No.
Can I guess?
You can most certainly guess. Yes.
Is it the 311?
3 tries. No, it wasn't. It was a soundtrack. It was a soundtrack.
Oh, it was a soundtrack. Okay, so we're talking what that would be 95, 96 ish.
Yes. Yeah. And I love it. I still love it to this day.
Titanic?
No.
Okay.
Think Disney.
Disney. Oh, Lion King?
No.
Okay.
Pocahontas.
Pocahontas. Okay. I don't even know what songs were on that soundtrack.
It's a great soundtrack.
Okay.
and a couple months ago, I put it on here at the house for Mila to listen to, and of course, I was like very passionate about singing all the songs. And Mila was like, she was like, "Can you put Prefab Sprout again, please, or Cyndi Lauper?"
Something other than this.
This is not good. She's very 80s. Yeah. That's my fault. Very 80s alternative. And that's definitely my fault.
Henry likes that stuff, and Henry likes, for whatever reason, my go-to during pandemic times has been to listen to like late 70s, early 80s, like I guess what you would say is yacht rock.
Okay, I've never heard that of that genre.
Oh, it's like Christopher Cross in America.
Okay.
Cross,
yeah. That's called yacht rock?
Yeah, Phil Collins.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'll have to send you. There's a whole web series called called Yacht Rock, where they all recreate these characters in really kind of intentionally terrible ways. Where like one of them is Kenny Loggins, and one of them is Jimmy Buffett. And, yeah, their whole thing is it's got to be smooth. Like you can't rock too much.
Right.
So like when you're out on the boat, you don't want to be like air guitar. You want to be like feeling it, maybe have a little cocktail.
Right.
Yeah. So
that's hilarious. I love. See, this is why it's good to record these things, because you
Totally.
find out about new things. I had no idea about that genre.
yeah. It's
That's
fairly
hilarious,
contentious too. There was like a Sirius XM station that was like a yacht rock
I love
station,
that.
and these guys that made the yacht rock podcast and like the
Okay.
video show are like, oh man, they like miss the mark so much, and they really dig into these records, and it's crazy. Like I didn't recognize like Toto Africa, like that song got popular again.
Is that considered
because
yacht
of Weezer?
yacht rock?
But that's an ultimate yacht rock
Right.
song.
Interesting. So
But-
Tears for Fears would be considered also as.
I think so. Like I don't think Shout is yacht rock.
Right. Maybe Shout not, but yeah.
But like everybody wants to rule the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty smooth.
Okay. Interesting.
Head Over Heels, I think might be.
Right.
Which that is one of my next covers that I'm
Oh,
doing.
that's awesome. Oh, we love Tears.
Yeah.
Tears for Fears is a huge influence on me, and
that whole Songs from the Big Chair record is perfect from front to back.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal, and oh yeah, I love. See, that's a different thing, because I actually grew up with two older brothers, and so I grew up listening to The Cure, U2, Tears for Fears, you know, and they also were the ones who, my brother Jorge was the one who told me about Joy Division, you know, Ian Curtis and the Buzzcocks and the whole post-punk scene, and I was like 16. I remember even when he wrote me an email, because I was studying in Germany at the time, and he told me, hey, if you have time, go to a record store and try to find a Joy Division CD or record, whatever. You got to listen to this. Ian Curtis was a singer. You know, he committed suicide. Blah blah blah. And I was just like, whoa, what is this? Like, I was just really interested in the whole story. And then when I bought Unknown Pleasures, and it was just like, wow, like that.
Blew your mind.
And then, of course, you know, at the time I was listening to, you know, I had just discovered Interpol, but I was already listening to, you know, the whole, I guess, what's it called? The post-punk revival scene in New York with the Hives and, sorry, the Strokes and, you know, and so many other bands that are part of that era. But yeah, no, it's 80s music has been always a key influence, and something that I would say that I grew up listening to more than just like at the time contemporary like 90s music.
Yeah, I love like the 80s stuff has come back, and it's kind of come back in really interesting ways. Like for a while there, it was like every band was just like a lot of 16th note kind of drumming, and like it was just like everything had to sound like a dance song. And now I love that it's getting into the more weird atmospheric parts of the 80s. Like people love a good Roland jazz chorus amp, or, you know.
Or a saxophone.
Sax solos are starting to become less
well, sax
limits.
I remember M83 was kind of the first big indie, you know, sort of mainstream act that introduced the sax as
Destroyer did that one record.
Destroyer did that too.
Just like smooth. That record would be, I think it's Kaput, I think is that record.
Kaput, yep.
That one is such a like, that's a yacht rock record right there.
Okay. Yeah, Destroyer is such a great, he's so talented. He's so talented. Man, yeah, it's just so much good music. And I don't know if it happens to you, but I also keep discovering new 80s music that I had no idea. Like I just discovered Prefab Sprout. I discovered it like 2.5 years ago while browsing see, this is the thing about record shopping, and it's unfortunate that I haven't been able to do that lately, but I've discovered so much music just being at a record store. And I would go to this place in oh man, I forget the neighborhood, but it was close to where we were living in Glendale, and in LA. And there was this really cute, really small, it was a narrow shop, record store. It was just a hall, you know, and it was just such a great vibe from everybody. They were super nice. And I would go there like once a week. Yeah. And I was there, and I was checking out vinyls, and then I was hearing this background music, and I was like, I really dig this song. And then the next song played, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really good. And then the third song, I was like, this is really. So I was like, I had to go up and ask them, like, what are you guys playing? And it was like a limited edition best hits compilated collection of all the Prefab Sprout singles. And I was like, I have to buy this. It was like $20. It's like the most expensive CD I've ever bought in
impulsive purchase.
I had to do it. I was like, this is perfect, because I was just writing. So they've been a big influence in Flora, in this new album that I'm recording, that I recorded. And I was just remembering, like, I would play it all the time. It was the CD that was always in the car. And so Mila grew up listening to this compilated CD record. It's actually 2 CDs of Prefab Sprout. And I'm obsessed with them. Like I went down that, like, rabbit hole of, like, okay, I want to know who the players, who the musicians were, who's behind this whole thing. So I've literally become a collector of all things Prefab Sprout. I don't know why. I have no idea
That's
why.
Awesome.
But something clicked with me in them, and I've just been following with Paddy McAloon, who's a singer, and who still keeps the band active. He still performs as Prefab Sprout, even though he's done so many different types of records with different sounds, and sonically every record sounds differently. But what I'm so fascinated about this character, about this guy, because he looks very, like, esteemed now. He's like a long white hair, he's like a long white beard, and he wears this very very gentleman-like apparel and outfit. But in any case, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's I love discovering new music all the time, and how powerful that is, and how empowering it can be too. Is there anything that you've listened or discovered recently that has given you
just blown me away,
additional wings to fly? It doesn't have to be necessarily something recently, but just something that you discovered later on.
Super quick before I forget my idea. I was always so jealous of those kids that had older brothers and sisters that were turning them on to that stuff. I just, I feel like it's such an awesome experience to have that. And I guess to some degree, because I missed out on it, I'm trying to do that for Henry a little bit. And just That's beautiful. He's just being blasted with music all day. I mean, not like at unsafe levels or anything, but he's just like, he's getting exposed to so much different stuff. And I'm really interested. Like, I wish I could fast forward to him being 18 years old and seeing, like, what he's listening to when he's sitting in his room, like, hating his parents and just wanting to not be around them. So to go back to your question.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I wonder what Henry's going to be listening to when he's 18.
Yeah,
I wonder what my kids are going to listen to. Yeah, exactly.
Like, genre-wise, like,
exactly.
I feel like we've seen some weirder stuff come through.
Right.
I guess I'm a boomer because I'm just like, I want to listen to music probably from the 60s or 70s or 80s, right, or like the 90s stuff that I cut my teeth on,
right,
alt rock wise.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's all these like hyper pop and K-pop and things like that
power
I'm just
pop.
like, I love power pop. Like, that's like 70s rock and roll to me. But but you think about these new genres that are starting to develop, EDM, trap, things like that I'm just like, this is beyond my pay grade. Like, right, I can't process it. Just my mind isn't wired that way. But I love that people are finding ways to make new things happen.
Right.
So back to your question, you asked, like, what's kind of like made me rethink music a lot lately. That band Wand, have you listened to them?
No.
They're an LA band.
Okay.
Their last record came out like 2 years ago.
Okay. On
Drag City, I think. Like, the title is escaping me because I feel like it's kind of a slightly weirder one. But their stuff is like, they started out being a really like kind of garagey rock band, and they've become more psychedelic as time has gone by. and that their most recent record, it's one of those I just put it on front to back, and I don't often say that a record is
Wow.
perfect from song 1 to song 10 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those things where I'm just like they couldn't have made a better record.
So
The guy's voice sounds a lot like
WAND?
Wand. Yeah. The guy's voice sounds a lot like Tom York.
Okay.
To a degree where like people could possibly go like, all right, like whatever. They're trying to be Radiohead. I don't think they really are. But if you like Radiohead vocalizations, you would really, really love this.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to listen to that because I've been listening to Radiohead again. I don't know why I've always loved them, obviously, and they've always been present in my life. Again, because I grew up with older brothers too. Like, I mean, OK Computer was probably the first record that I heard from them, and I was like, I don't know, 13, 12.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, you know? And I remember I've always gone back to OK Computer in different parts of my life. Like late 90s, and then like towards like the half of the 2000s. And then I stopped like kind of listening. Like when In Rainbows came out, that was like the last one that I really listened to.
Yeah.
And then I kind of like, I didn't really listen to anything after that.
There's such a gravity around that band in terms of their importance.
Yes.
That I think sometimes it's hard to just listen to them for like the fact of like, hey, I'm going to listen to an enjoyable band.
Right.
It's like, sometimes it's just like, I'm listening to Radiohead and it's got to be this like massive world shaking event. It's like, I think Pink Floyd gets the kind of same way in my head, at least. It's just like their reputation is almost even more important than their music is to some degree.
Right.
Depending on your perspective. But
no, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good comparison. They're just amazing. But I always kind of go back to the same albums. Like I listen to OK Computer.
Yeah.
But the thing was that I just, the reason why, because I typically let music come back to me naturally. I'm not like looking for it. It just happens to be there. And I remember this was just like 2 months ago, and I was scrolling through, I was just on YouTube, and then their In Rainbow's full album live session was uploaded or something.
Yeah.
And
it's like them in like a,
yeah.
It's not a basement studio, but it's like a pretty big, that same thing came on for me. And
amazing.
It's always suggested when I get into YouTube wormholes, which is like why I can't go to bed before 2 a.m.
Exactly.
any given night, even though I know I need to.
We should be texting each other at like 1:30 in the morning. It's like, hey man, are you listening to that Wand session?
Yeah. Are you up late like that too?
Oh yeah. I'm a night owl.
Okay. I was going to send you a text the other day about that art.
I'm an active and passionate night owl.
Okay, good. Same here. That's one of the things that as the responsible parent on duty,
right,
I've tried so hard to change and to be like, I'm going to go to bed at a reasonable hour, but for whatever reason, I'm wired towards nighttime, and I'm also there's those people that are, you just don't want to what is it? I'm having a total brain fart right now. FOMO. You just get that like fear of missing out on something. Yep. And for me, my fear of missing out is like I'm going to have an experience, from 12:30 until 2:00 where I have that time to myself, where everybody else is asleep and I can just focus on something.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's coming down here and working on something. Sometimes it's just like falling into those YouTube wormholes where,
oh my gosh, tell me about it. Yeah.
It's under the guise of furthering my musical education is how I sell it to myself. But you're just like, all right, I'm going to watch this like hour-long Radiohead thing. And also, it's been so nice to have YouTube during the pandemic because you can pull up concerts, and Marie has this giant monitor in here. I wish I could show it to you, but it's just like this huge monitor for her work stuff.
Right. And
I'll pull up a concert and just like sit here and just all of a sudden feel like you're in the middle of it. And you go, oh, okay, that's what I miss so much. So
it's crazy. You can spend hours and hours. One of the exercises that I've done recently, because we've normalized the screen time always. And I remember that when I was a kid, I would always go to sleep listening to music that really empowered me and lifted me. And I started doing that again this week. I actually did it last night, and it was such a ride.
What were you listening to?
The Cranberries.
Okay.
I love the Cranberries.
Yeah.
And
I just was watching your cover the other day.
Oh man. Yeah, no, the Cranberries is a special band for me. I really. But anyways, I did that. I was laying down on the couch, of course, as usual, and I fell asleep there. But I was just I put on the music on, and I just listened to the music and fall asleep to the music.
Yeah.
I hadn't done that in years.
Yeah.
It was very gratifying.
I think we are so used to screen time. I think part of my writing stuff, I get really distracted by screens, and you're trying to work on recording on a computer, and then of course your hand just magically gets magnetically driven over to like the browser.
Sure.
And then next thing you know, an hour and a half of looking at Strokes videos or whatever has passed.
Same here. Dude, we should do a live stream of just like sharing the screen and just watching. Seriously, I'm not
1,000% about that.
We got to do that.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Hey, Greg. So, of course, we have parental duties. I have my own right now, and I'm gonna have to say goodbye. But before we do that, I wanted to, thank you so much for
oh my gosh, man,
your availability, for doing this with me, being the second episode. It means a lot to me. Meeting you, shaped my life in many ways. Not just because I met you and I learned so much from you, but one of the things I was going to talk about is the Strymon Blue Sky pedal that you introduced to me is my sound. Like I've used that pedal ever since. So I'm incredibly grateful for you for that, because you you shared that pedal with me when I went to your place, and you were like, hey, check this out. Just press the left one, not the right one, the left one. And then I was just like, the sound was just, so angelical, and I was like, perfect. I was like, that's literally been my sound. So
I have Zach from Rogue Wave to thank for that. So
exactly.
by proxy. If you haven't tried the Strymon Iridium yet,
I have.
Okay.
It's amazing.
That's what I do all my guitars in now, so I'm not disturbing everybody. Is like just nice direct in sound.
I was actually fortunate enough to meet. There's a really cool store in LA called Perfect Circuit. They also are a online platform where they sell a lot of synths and very intricate.
I've heard of it, I think.
Hardware, but they have an actual store in. I think it's Burbank, and I used to go there a couple times. They have like some free training sessions, and like specialists come out. And so they did one with Strymon, because they're actually based out of California too. And so I actually met up with a director of marketing for Strymon, and I had a really good chat with him. And he gave me like a bunch of stickers, and like it was a really cool thing. And obviously they came with all their showcasing all the pedals and all the future stuff that they were coming up with. And I was just like, I would love to work there. And I actually the HR, I guess, manager was there, and I was like, can I work there? I need a job. Yeah. And she was like, what do you do? I was like, well, here's my background. It's like, well, just send me a resume. And of course I never heard from them, but here we are.
Yeah.
But yes. So thank you for that, because it's definitely been a significant and very important element in my music. Since then I've used it.
I love that.
Thank you.
I love that. That's awesome.
And before we go,
I look forward to us hanging out in person in the hopefully not distant future, and geeking out on more pedals.
Oh man, I daydream about that. So this is why we're doing this. But before we go, just really last thing, how can people find your music or see your graphic design work? I know that at the beginning you mentioned your website, but maybe tell us to the listeners or anybody that's out there.
I'm on a lot of different social medias at Kentucky Chrome, and then the song is up on Spotify, up on Bandcamp if you want to buy it, or iTunes. And I'll continue. And then I have my podcast that I did that I haven't done in eons is theroyalbasement.com. So
nice.
That was kind of, I don't know, similar to what you're doing, where I'm just talking to people about creative process and what was motivating them, because I was looking for that same thing.
Right.
And then we had Henry, and I just kind of shut the thing down. So, so theroyalbasement.com, kentuckychrome.com. Spotify, all that stuff.
Perfect.
But yeah, if anybody's out there and likes what they hear, I'd love to hear from you, because it really does, like, it means a lot to me that you had me on here. Like, it's extra motivation for me to kind of like,
of course,
keep going. So I'm really honored that you would want to pick my brain about
absolutely
stuff. It really means a lot to me.
It's my pleasure. It really is. And I'm glad that we're reconnecting again. And I really hope that later this year we can hang out and our families can feast together and watch Star Wars.
I would love that. I would love that. I will smoke some meats and we'll get the kids running around in the backyard.
Don't get me started. All right, my friend. Thank you again for joining us this evening. It's been really great to talk with you. We also look forward to listening to more music from the Royal Firecrackers, which, by the way, is a really awesome name, really rad name. And to all the listeners, thank you. Gracias. And remember, be kind. Peace. Thanks so much.